Good morning, all. I hope that you accept me through on-site and on offline, that we are committed to our audience, to our case. Please accept this and for the cause of justice to our people and all our people. This conference, one of Muwatin's annual conferences, is being held in its 29th edition while we are in the midst of an escalation of the barbarism of colonialism that has been going on for more than a year. We face this reality with all the means at our disposal. The first of which is that we refuse to normalize this reality. We refuse to submit to the barbarism of the occupation and its allies. 3 years ago, Muwatin Institute held its conference in a hybrid form for the first time in the circumstances of the pandemic that had affected the world, which it was unable to overcome for more than a year, not because of the inability of science and modern technologies to contain the epidemic, but because of the lame priorities of the global system. Today, we are holding our conference in a hybrid form due to the occupation epidemic, which the world can confront, but its lame are priorities for and its false interest in peace and its greed prevent it from stopping the Israeli killing machine. Since 2019, the COVID epidemic has claimed the lives of 0.1% of the planet's population, while the Israeli killing machine has claimed the lives of 2% of the Gazans, meaning that the devastation of the Israeli barbarism is 20 times more than that of the pandemic. This is before we mention of the misery of the lives of those who remained and are displaced, or mention that the damned virus did not destroy homes, schools, hospitals, streets, and farms, as the last wave of the Israeli aggression did. I will move on to the subject of this conference. I will start with the complex title of the conference and talk of the status of the rights of the prospects of liberation is the product of the situation that leads to despair of international law and human rights that are boasted by forces that support the barbaric aggression after they supported the occupation force, and the inability of their tools to even temporarily stop the killing of children in Gaza. It is an implicit declaration that the prospects of liberation are not subject to tools controlled by the force of hegemony and colonialism. As for the borrowing of the time of giant monsters from Gramsci, it is a reference to the era that witnessed the rise of fascism in Europe in the second quarter of last century, which led the world to a Second World War. History will not go back, but its strategies can be repeated. We must study history to avoid the repetition of tragedies. Everyone knows that the danger of a third world war weighs on humanity and that the danger of nuclear war is real. But what pushed the world towards the slippery slopes that made these dangers more severe and come closer? It is, if you will, history itself. The era of new liberalism, which emerged from the capitalist system nearly 5 decades ago, has reached the stage of decadence. Its rot has become deeper, broader, and greater than its drugs and magic can control. But the existence of this slope of decadence, which I claim is inevitable and unavoidable, does not necessarily mean slipping, but it imposes caution on us. And because the new liberal system is now faltering and seeking to cling on the brink of the abyss, hoping to hold for more time, we must not only be careful, but also refrain from trying to rescue those who have fallen into the abyss. It is deep, and the weight of those who are falling in is heavy because they feed on our strength. We are living the beginnings of a new world order, the features of which have not yet been determined. Rather, what we see today of wars and conspiracies is a struggle between the forces of the current system over the nature of the new system and its place in it. Therefore, there is no escape at this stage from sharp polarization as the forces of the past are trying to confront changes. And they are in a state of denial that they have reached the stage of decline. But at the same time, they're trying to benefit from the state of instability and chaos that they themselves created in order to expand and deepen their hegemony. They seek to escalate their hegemony for two reasons. First is its expansionist nature, and the second is their belief that rising hegemony can enable them to regain control of the wheel of history, or at least slow down its course. Thus, wars, fascism, populism, and various forms of gambling with a future of humanity becomes a popular trend that the powers hegemony turn to without considering its consequences. And this explains the silence regarding the barbarism of the Israeli colonizer and the complicity of the powers that continue to preach the rule of law and human rights. They believe that this barbarism is necessary in order to preserve their system and their position in it. Stability in the global system today means a faster pace in the process of ending what remained of the system of unilateral hegemony over the world. And therefore, the power of hegemony are not in a hurry to extinguish the hotbeds of tension and the wars or stop the massacres in Palestine and elsewhere. Today, the struggle is still over unilateral hegemony, and it must be noted that the shift towards pluralism does not mean, nor does it aim to end hegemony, but rather it seeks to share it and not end it. As for us, we want to end it and eliminate it, and it's preferable that we be able to uproot it from its roots. Will multipolarity, which is expected to replace unipolarity, serve the goal of eliminating hegemony or even limiting it? Multipolarity is likely to lead to a situation that gives more room for the struggle against hegemony. It is a struggle on a broader front. In all cases, the organization and action of anti-hegemony forces is the decisive factor in this long-term struggle. Success, even limited and modest success in this struggle, requires the crystallization of the forces that have an interest in ending hegemony and not just supporting and backing the forces seeking to end unipolarity in order to share hegemony. But who are these forces that have an interest in ending hegemony rather than sharing it? They are not all empires seeking to restore their glory, nor are they small states that want to play roles similar to those of empires and believe that this is possible because they use a distorted balance of power adopted by the global system in the neoliberal era. This balance increases the weight of money and technologies of hegemony and diminishes the weight of people and the masses. Rather, the crushed forces in the current global system are the ones who have an interest in ending hegemony. As for the empires, they will either move to the end of the road or just fail. And same, there will be no place left for small countries who held to these empires because distortion and the illness that have led them into this ambition will become useless when all these systems will diminish. Neither money nor all technologies will give these systems a weight, especially if people who demonstrate against Palestine, against the money, they will be able to acquisite everything and its factors were countries or manipulations or organizations. Meaning that this system that overcomes the system will not continue if there was no real democracy on the that will take 0.1% for the whole world. I will allow myself to get out a bit and tell you that sometimes getting out of the system, which resembles the reality and the ground reality, which mostly refers to the reality imposed by the forces of domination and the avoidance and abandonment of this is the trend against the organization, and what the union of imagination with the practice produces forms a second aspect of the distortion that I mentioned a moment ago. It is a distortion that had afflicted many minds within the neoliberal cognitive tendencies that are hostile to culture, which seek to reduce culture to folklore. Not at all because of their concern for local culture, but because this reduction constitutes a tool for dividing the anti-hegemonic forces, which share a culture of reverence for justice, equality, and freedom, and differ in their folklore. That's why the forces of hegemony enhance the status of folklore under the slogan of developing local culture, but they empty it of its collective content by enhancing individualism, and empty it of its rational content by encouraging consumption, and by commodifying it and transforming it into raw materials that are traded by the new entrepreneurs. The tragedy is not complete here, but it is presented as a critical and even resistant act and deterrent to colonialism. Returning to the talk about the necessity and importance of the masses lining up against the forces of hegemony, the victory of Palestinians in this stage is a victory for democracy that has been trampled by the systems of hegemony and has abandoned its liberal shell that it used to boast about. I say the victory of Palestinians, and I don't mean a military resolution that I don't believe is possible or even useful. I say victory of Palestinians, and I don't give any weight to the trampling of the myth of the invisible Israeli power in the mud, as this is not the first time that the myth has been torn apart. It was previously torn apart by the children of stones during the first Intifada. I say the victory of Palestinians, and I'm not indifferent to the death and destruction that has befallen us, especially in the last year. But I believe that the mere cessation of the war that was invented by the powers of hegemony and carried out by the army of a mercenary proxy state that is an important step that constitutes an additional nail in the coffin of the current world order. Cessation of the war is not only saving of lives and an end to the killings, destruction, and displacement, but it is also a nullification of the colonizers' plan that is trying to transform the issue from a right issue to a humanitarian issue. And it's trying to normalize hegemony, or rather to normalize hegemony in its fascist version, and postpone the project of getting rid of colonialism indefinitely, let alone abolish it. Therefore, thwarting this plan is the first plan on the road to victory today. But stopping the aggression requires the support of sufficient forces to stand up to the United States and its allies, without which the Zionist occupation force cannot achieve any goals, and which benefits from this aggression to contribute postponing the effects of the collapse of the system of unilateral hegemony that has been enabled it to plunder a large part of the wealth of the globe and to mortgage another part. Although these forces are playing what is called the football lost time, the victory is possible, and the extension of the barbaric Israeli aggression for more than a year is an evidence for this possibility. The ferocity and arrogance of Zionism today constitutes a crude attempt by one of the agents of the hegemonic powers to enable the crumbling global order to preserve itself, prolong its life, and seize a share in the future before it is born, enabling the hegemonic powers to distort the future and wear masks that enable them to continue in reaping the fruits of their hegemony. There's no doubt that what we see, what is we are witnessing today in terms of aggression against Palestine with all its geographical and demographic components, Lebanon, Iran, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq, is not an isolated act of a small entity in crisis that relies on its makers after 3/4 of a century of its existence. Therefore, the battle for Palestinian liberation must be included within a liberation project of a global nature. The signs and features of which we see in the widespread solidarity with the rights of Palestinians around the world. We must define the features of this project and determine the position of our project within it. And this is what this conference will hopefully contribute to shedding lights on. The sessions of this conference will discuss the global context of colonialism and its resistance, and the rise of fascism in the era of neoliberalism's demise, the failure of falsehood of international law in the age of polarization, the organic links between the local and the international, the unfolding and exposure of regional division, and an attempt to take all of this into account in the process of formulating the Palestinian Liberation Project. Finally, allow me to welcome you, speakers, this conference, participants in its discussions, and observers of its works. I begin to welcome our guests from outside the Arab world, from outside Palestine, outside Beirut University, and from within it, ending with the Muwatin Institute team and its colleagues from the university's various units who worked hard to make this conference a success in difficult circumstances. I would like to express mainly on behalf of my colleagues our sincere gratitude to those who did not hesitate to accept the invitation to participate in the work of this project, because they feel that this is that this contribution and part of declaration of solidarity with a human character. It is this solidarity that we believe there is a hope for a smiling world is based on solid foundations. Thank you.